I'm Mike, welcome back to the workshop. So, it's been a few weeks since I had a video because I've been off doing musicals and generally living my life. But it's great to be back and it's great to see your beautiful faces again. I see you. Anyway, you may remember before I went on my hiatus, I did a video where I showed you how to simply make a handle for a file or a chisel. And during that, it became very clear that my saw sharpening setup is super subpar. Even further subpar than that. So, this week I'm going to show you how to make a really simple saw vise that'll help you when you're sharpening your saws. So, let's get down to that. Essentially, there are two different types of saws. So you have your traditional saw, which is a hardened steel blade that can be resharpened, and then you have a more modern saw which has this black line from just that edge been sent through and super hardened. These modern saws, the black line can't be resharpened, but this saw and all my other beautiful old style saws can be. Like a chisel or any other tool, sharpness is vital in a saw. In order to do that, we need to be able to reliably hold our saw nice and tight and straight so we can sharpen it with the file. In order to do that then, as shown in an example, we're going to make what's known as a saw vise. So it'll form in basically this shape, much like the jaws of a normal vise. The difference is we're going to have a nice long extension, and we'll have a fixed point here. That allows us then to clamp this saw vise into our normal vise at a comfortable height for the sharpening. These scoops are very important because if you see here, the handle is cutting in across this blade, and I want to support this blade the whole way along. So the scoop, I'll draw here, it's only a permanent marker, allows me to clamp around my handle. So that'll be my major consideration when I'm designing which handle is the most intrusive, and it's actually this one. Most of my saws are this gent style, which don't have that issue. And I'll just remove that now. Don't draw on your saws with permanent markers. So that is as simple and as complicated as I'm going to make this. My key features are making this long enough that I can clamp and be comfortable. I also want to be able to clamp all the saws I have, including my Japanese saws, which can be resharpened in the length, and allow for a bit of future proofing for in the future if I get much longer saws. Let's say I get a saw like this or a full-size cabinet saw, that I can sharpen that. So I'm just going to go through, do a bit of measurements, and I'll come back to you when I've decided my sizes. Right, so here we have our design. And I went and I got my long saw here, my long saw, I got my normal hand saw, which would be a reasonable facsimile for hand saws in general of this size. And I won't be going to full length on this, I'll only be going about 3/4. The vast majority of my saws end up around 10 inches cutting, which is probably what the vast majority of saws do end up as. Obviously a cabinet saw compared to a tennis saw is longer, but I found that middle ground by going for 12 inches. So it's going to be 12 inches along the top. I know my little bit is 30, and I'm going to come in 18. For this, I happen to have, zoom out, So I'm lucky enough to have a scrap of really nice birch ply, so it'll look sweet. I'm going to cut this up, make all my parts, and then we'll start assembling this. Right, so now we have our parts cut out. Next step, and you can avoid this step if you want, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to put a half lap joint between these two, so when they join together they're flush. It also gives it a bit of strength. So there are a lot of better tutorials after this. This is not a tutorial video, this is a watch me make video, so I'm just going to start making. So the term half lap is pretty self-explanatory. What I'm going to do here is cut half the thickness out of one piece and half the thickness out of the other, and then when I join them back together they'll be flush. Now I say this a lot in my videos, but the best joint you'll get will always be one off a knife line. It's far more accurate, and here actually I brought an old scalpel out of retirement, and yeah, I think I'm going to go back to using this. These are very inexpensive. You can pick them up in most craft stores, and they do give you a great sharp edge, and disposable blades are relatively easy to come by. But whilst I'm doing all the rest of it, music? Yeah, I think music. As I'm using birch ply for this, I'm going with more mechanical ways of cutting out my joints. So I use the bandsaw here to rough cut the shoulders on the upright pieces, and then I use my router to cut the groove in the centre of what will be our vice jaws. Now, birch ply is a great material. It's quite expensive, but it is an amazing material in terms of its strength and in terms of surface finish. You'll see that at the end when I do the obligatory Danish oil shots. But yeah, cutting through this stuff is tough, and 100% you need to have eyes, ears and a mask on. Also, make sure that you have the depth adjustment set strongly on your router. You can see here I went a bit deep. Now I did patch this and it's never seen, but learn from my mistakes. So after some fettling and squaring up the shoulders using my shoulder jig, which you can see in my other videos, which I highly recommend you watch, it's time to shape the two jaws. So for this I just make up a very simple cardboard template, and then using the super glue and masking tape trick I glue the two jaws together, and then I'm able to very simply mark out and then cut them at the same time and sand them, and that guarantees then that both pieces will match. And then it's time to glue it up. We're on the home stretch. So, yeah, I suck at this whole videoing thing. Fortunately, my camera ran out of battery and didn't record anything I've done in the last 5 minutes. About 20 minutes. So all I did, once these are glued up, I chamfered off this edge here. This gives me access in to sharpen my saws. And then I marked for a hinge that's going to go between the two of them so I can clamp and vise. So when I'm marking for a hinge, I'll just show you an example. What I like to do, I'll bring it down, is I like to mark where my hinge is going to go. Let's say here. Then I use the hinge itself. In this case, I don't need to go past the barrel of the hinge, so that's fine. I line the hinge itself up on it, and then using the scalpel, very sharp scalpel, I just trace around the hinge, being careful not to cut through my fingers, and that then gives me the shape of that hinge, and I can cut it out. The method I tend to use, you can use the router or whatever, is the more old school method. So we chase that line around. I'm not going to be too careful now. Cut all those down to the depth of our hinge on all sides. And then you chip away the material you don't want. So this takes a bit of practice. But eventually you'll get there where you're removing just the right amount for the hinge. I'll show you when those are all, that'll be going the whole way across the top. I'll show cleaning up this one. When you're the whole way across, then you just come in from this side and cut off all of those little feathers to our lines, and we'll just work that down then till we're at the hinge depth. So that's what I was doing while my camera wasn't filming. So now we have a giant clapperboard. There's only two things left to do, and it's get around two problems. One is on the back of these, any of these back saws, you have this brass strengthening ribbon, so that's thicker than the width of the blade, so we need to be able to clamp around it. And as is, if I want to put my saw in there and I want to clamp it, you can see if it will focus. There's a gap there. So I'm going to solve that very simply by taking this piece of thin strip, and I'm just going to glue it to each face, which gives a gap in here that can live in. The final thing then is I want to be able to clamp this tight, because when I put it in my vise it's only for holding it. And to do that I'm going to show you a little trick and use a very simple little tool. Piece of hardware. Okay, so I'm just going to glue this on, just with super glue, doesn't need anything fancy, and then we'll put in our little locker piece. So in order to make sure we have a tight clamp on our blades, I chamfer down these jaws and I just kind of strike a middle line between the widths of what I have and sort of eye it. But after that, it's time to put in our little clampy piece. Right, we're nearly done. Almost to the sanding and finishing stage. So in order to clamp my blades in here, now that I have this adjusted so it kind of clamps on all of them, it's a bit hard because they're all slightly different thicknesses, so the point at which it contacts will be slightly different. I'm going to use one of these Allen bolts with a little spur nut, and these are very simple. All you have to do is get the correct size forstner bit. You drill a tiny little hole, but you just want to get that little bit below the ground. Then you drill a hole wider than the shank, hammer it in, and that then helps you, that grips it and puts a mechanical strong thread in. And with that done, it's testing time. And overall I'm very happy with this. It clamps beautifully tight and secure, and I have great unfettered access when I'm sharpening. So I envision I'll get a lot of use out of this over the years. So now it's assembled and it's sanded. It's everybody's favourite time. Obligatory Danish all time. And that's it. Yeah, this is a simple project and something I'm going to use daily in my workshop now. The actual making of it was fine if I didn't have technical issues. But as always, thank you all for staying to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and all that fun stuff. And absolutely do try this at home.